The crew was threatened, okay? It was 2 days or 3 days after I got out of intensive care. The Master at Arms come up and said, there's a 3-star admiral downstairs and wants to talk to you. So he wheeled me downstairs and pushed me in this room. It was about a 10 by 10 foot room. And then they left, and the door opened up, and here's this 3-star admiral, Admiral Isaac Kidd. And then he closed the door and he said, are you Richard Larry Weaver? I said, yes, I am, sir. And he turned and deadbolted the door. So I got a little concerned then. And he said, I'm going to take my stars off now. He took his stars off, put them on the table. He said, tell me what you saw June the 8th. And I told him where I was, and, you know, like I just told you. And then when I was done telling him, he put his stars back on. He said, okay, I'm an admiral again. He said, if you tell anybody, your mom, your dad, your wife, anybody about this, you'll be put in jail or in prison, he said. Put in jail or lose the key or worse. That's a 3-star admiral. I'm 21 years old. I'm still fighting for my life. And then he left. Anyhow, I wouldn't close my eyes because I just felt like, man, I close my eyes, I'm never going to wake up. And we were there 17 hours. 17 hours before they came to help us. Johnson was waiting for us to sink. And they say and talk up, no man left behind. I get so damn tired of that. I mean, you read about it, hear about it. If a pilot goes down off an aircraft carrier or whatever, they'd look for days or weeks even, and they should. But here Johnson was writing off the whole ship's company. He stated in the Oval Office to Admiral Moore and some other ones, he wants that ship on the bottom and every sailor killed. That was his quote. We want to testify what happened, because all Washington has done for 50 years has taken the word of the enemy, and the enemy just happened to be Israel. And that's all political and everything else, just like ours is political and everything else. It's not what's true about Americans. It's what's true about Washington, what's true about the government of Israel, and what's true about Israel and my own government together. Because, in my opinion, Johnson and Diane set this up because they hit us with rocket and armor-piercing munitions. That opens up the holes in the ship. Then they hit us with napalm, which is gelled gasoline, for those that don't know. That starts to burn the ship within. And then they had torpedo gunboats come and fire torpedoes. And what's really bad is they missed with every torpedo they fired. They had French-built torpedoes. And we had an American submarine, nuclear submarine, off our starboard bow, about a mile and a half out. I found this later, every intelligence ship has a watchdog submarine keeping watch over the intelligence ship. And this was hearsay, and I don't know, it might be true. If it is true, they probably burned the doggone tapes, but I was told that they were filming the attack through the periscope. But they missed with all their torpedoes. But the USS Amberjack, 2 guys stepped forward, they made some tapes, and one testified that he got the order to arm a torpedo. And he thought, what the hell are we arming a torpedo for? The other guy was in charge of pushing the red button on the bridge to fire the torpedo. And they got the order from Johnson, and they fired the torpedo because they were under orders. They didn't have any choice in the matter. Under orders, and that's the torpedo that hit the USS Liberty. Our own American ship fired upon us when they missed with all their torpedoes, and Johnson wanted us on the bottom. That's why. When they fired that torpedo, it happened to hit an I-beam right at the strongest point. And it flared out the explosion because it was a 40-foot hole. if it wouldn't have hit flush, if it had hit to the right or left another half an inch or so from the warhead, it would have went right through the Liberty. We'd have been on the bottom in no time. But it just happened to be right at the right place if you had to be hit. And what's really something, and this, nobody's hearing this first but you, and I will share this in DC when I get there, that I had the tapes put in a safe haven, I should say. And I did my best to call, didn't work. Did my best to email, didn't work. And this is over a couple months leading up toward the reunion. And I finally emailed the special investigator's sister. And I emailed her about 9 times. And about a month and a half ago now, I got an email from her. I thought, oh man, this is good news, because he was holding them for me. And the email started out, Richard, all I'm asking that you do is delete this email as soon as you read it. Please do this for me. And then she told me that DC threatened my investigator and his sister that they do not try to make any contact with Richard Larry Weaver. And they threatened them right there. And I don't have the tapes, but they threatened them right there.
You mentioned a reunion. I don't know if you mean this reunion or sometime in the past.
Now, no, the 50th reunion, the one coming up.
Okay.
That's what I say. You're the first one to hear this, that the only other one that knows is the president of the LVA, Liberty Veterans Association. He's the only other one that knows, because I was really heartbroken when I couldn't retrieve those tapes. Well, my name is Richard Larry Weaver. I was a boatsmate on USS Liberty. I arrived on board April 17th, and we pulled out and we were headed to Abidjan, Africa. We weren't scheduled to go to the Mediterranean. We were going to go south over the equator. But we got orders, and everybody had to go get somebody that was on Liberty and get them back to the ship right away, and we were pulling out for the Mediterranean. So they didn't tell us anything. They just, told us what to do. And anyway, I was on watch on the bow June the 8th, and during my watch, I was able to see there was two or three fighters at real high altitude, sort of buzzing around the ship, but they were really high. And then a little bit later, in my watch, I saw from the bow a boxcar is the nickname for this type of aircraft. That was about maybe half the altitude of the jets. And they went by, and they didn't go in circles. They might have took a half circle. And then as I was getting relieved from my watch, I was going down the companionway stairs there, and I looked up and I saw this, I always nicknamed it a bucket of bolts. It was an old aircraft, like from Second World War or something like that, and it was painted like a dark gray. And it was coming in close, and I thought maybe if he wasn't going to bank it, it was going to hit the mast. And I looked up, and I could see the co-pilot, and he had his window open in that aircraft. And I waved to him, and he waved back and was smiling. And I always stated, I could see how bright his teeth were, and he was that low, he could probably read USS Liberty on my ball cap. And as they went by on the starboard wing, which would be facing me, behind the wing was a big Star David. And I knew we were in a war zone and everything with Egypt. You could see the smoke and the battle was going on. You could just, knew there was a conflict there. And I felt, I felt kind of relieved because I thought, oh, they're an ally. They know who we are. So that was a good sign to me. And anyhow, I went to chow, and then I had an appointment with the doc because I was having some dizziness when I was at the helm. You rotate on the watch, different watches. And before I went to the bow, I was on the helm. And the doc just told me to come on in and enter lunch. So I did. And I was sitting there on the table, and he was looking at my ear. He said, well, you have a slight hole in the eardrum. That would account for imbalance, but I think it's going to be fine. I'll give you a couple drops. And then all of a sudden, man, we heard this rat-tat-tat-tat-tat. And before the noise, they mentioned on the 1MC, which is their intercom, that they're going to test the engine for the motor whaleboat. So that rat-tat-tat sound that I heard and the doc heard, I said, Doc, the damn prop came off of that whaleboat. Because that's exactly what it sounded like hitting the bulkhead. And right after that, they called general quarters. And I always took pride, as most of the guys on the ship, took pride in getting to your general quarters station as quick as possible. Well, I was a telephone talker on the secondary con. And secondary con was just one floor up from where I was seeing the doc. I thought, man, I'm going to have a good time. But as I was getting ready to leave, it said, this is not a drill. This is not a drill. We are under attack. Well, I was already coded in with tapes of how many times we did general quarters. You just did it. And I got up and got the phones on and checked in with the bridge, And then, one of the jets was coming in for a strafe and come right up the middle from the bow, from where I was seeing. That's what I could see at that time. And I said to the first class, who was like acting as like officer of the deck, and Fred was the helmsman. And I always laughed about this. We were on an old helicopter pad, and they made that secondary con. So secondary con was to be used in case the bridge got blown up. But we were right out in the open. We were going to get blown up before anybody. But anyhow, I said to the first class, so we got to get down. I said, you're coming up, there's going to be another one coming up in the middle. He said, no, you don't go anywhere without the orders from the captain. I said, you want to listen to my earpiece? On the bridge right now, it is chaos. I said, and I know our captain, he'd want us to survive, do whatever we could to survive. So Fred and I jumped down, and I had 35 foot of line for my headphones, so I could still hear the bridge. Well, we jumped down, and I jumped down, and Fred did, and he started toward the rail. And I thought, my God, he's going to jump ship. Because Fred lost a little bit more than me. That's just the way it is, and sometimes that happens. That doesn't make me more of a man or anything like that, but it just, the situation is so intense. I grabbed him by the collar, and I pulled him and threw him down on the deck. And I looked up, and I saw this jet coming, so I pulled Fred into an offset there was between bulkheads there, like a U shape. And then I dove on top of him to hold him down, and it also protected him from being wounded too. But my main reason was so he wouldn't jump ship. And then after that strafe, for about 5, 7, a time like that, you're not counting, okay? You're guesstimating how many times. When it's actually happened, it seems like it's 50 times, but it's really not. But I went out, and I could see the jet coming, and they were coming at about 10-degree angles, one and then the other one and then the other one, and looping around. They're looping around, and it always got me that they said there was no flag flying, because I was so frustrated that my line of sight, the American flag, was getting in the way for me to see which way the jet was coming in. So it was obstructing my view. And I was only 175 feet of an angle to the flag. All these other people that read articles, make up articles, whatever they do, I didn't know where in the hell they were, because I was only 175 feet from that flag. And I'll call them a liar. I don't care if they're a president or any world leader. I'll call them a liar to their face. I don't care, because the truth is the truth. And anyhow, I did it like 5, 7 times, whatever it would be. And then I come out too soon one time, and he was the apex of his dive. And people aren't going to believe this, but I don't really care. He saw me, and as he was going out of his dive and coming up, I saw him, and he turned and looked down at me. Even at that speed, that really happened. I don't care who believes it. And right after that, he stopped his dive, and he went straight aft. I thought, oh my God, he's coming up the middle, from the fantail. So he had a radio the other attacking jets that he's breaking off from their formation attack. So I got a hold of Fred, and there was a electric motor for the laundry sitting there that a shaft went through into the laundry for the dryer. And there's only room for one person there. I mean, it was that tight, and there's no way we could both get there. I got Fred, and I was screaming at him, don't come out, just stay here, stay put, promise me. And he did promise me, and then I looked around where I could take cover. And I tried to get behind a boat cleat, not where you tie off the big cylinders. No, that was more around the side. It wouldn't give me any protection. But this was just a boat cleat that would guide the lines. And I got in a fetal position, and making myself as small as I could be, because I knew he was coming. And I looked up, and I saw our holiday flag. So they shot that flag that I was observing. They shot that down, and I don't know if it's a 15 by 17 foot American flag. It's called the holiday flag. They put that up on the mast. And at a time like that, I was looking at the red, white, and blue, and the stars, the stripes, and I thought to myself, my God, isn't that beautiful? That our American flag, in contrast with the beautiful blue sky, because it was just so clear that day. And then I closed my eyes and waited for hell's horror. And I didn't have to wait long. And I was hit with rocket and cannon fire from the jet. It blew me up in the air about 5 feet. And I had all my ab muscles blown from my body and 2.5 foot of my colon. And I received 140 shrapnel wounds. The reason I know the count of that, because some people question that too. How do you know? Well, Dr. Flynn, who saved my life on the USS America, he told me that he counted them all. Because I asked him, how do you know how many I had? He said, I had to dress them all. I know how many shrapnel wounds you had. So, as I saved Fred, I was there, and I pushed myself up with my left hand and was seated, and I had a phosphorus fire where the big hole was in the side of my stomach, that probably, a big piece of shrapnel or whatever tore up my insides. And it had a phosphorus burn. The phosphorus burn is like a fireplace when it gets down to just the coals. Well, that's the way it is on the skin, at least my skin. I don't know about other people. It might have been hit with munitions with phosphorus in it. And I was glad I was bleeding so much, because I used my own blood to put it out. Because human flesh stinks so bad when it's on fire. So I got that put out, and then I looked up, I said, Fred. And he come out, and like I said, as I saved him, he saved me. If I wouldn't have saved him, if he'd have jumped ship, well, then maybe I got behind the motor. Who knows? But I know he came out, and he got a hold of me and helped me get to sick bay. And I got in the sick bay there, and the doc was looking at me, and I was laying on that table. It was a stainless steel table that had a lip all around it. And he was using those clamp scissors, stopping major arteries just to stop the bleeding so he could see what was going on, because I was just pumping out all over the place. And he had gotten that done, and then he was going to, just pack it with some heavy gauze and stuff like that, and they were going to transport me down to the mess decks along with the other wounded. And they, all of a sudden, we took a rocket through the ceiling of sick bay. And shrapnel from that rocket hit the doc in the stomach. I don't know how many pieces got him, but I found out later, because I didn't know at the time, because I had my head, and I was probably in shock by then. But I found out later that he had taken some shrapnel in his stomach. He got a couple 4x4s and put his life jacket on to keep a compress, to keep the bleeding down. And right where he had just been working on me, it just tore me up again. And I was shooting fountains out. And he clipped off and scissored or whatever. And then he got, I don't know, he must have tied them up, because I don't recall any scissors, but at that time I was hurting all over my body so bad that I couldn't really tell how bad I was wounded. And he said, "Weaver, you okay? We're going to put you on the floor." I said, "Yeah, I'm okay with that, Doc." And then I was on the floor, and Fred was with me. He stayed with me right up to the time that I got evacuated. And I'm laying there, and then they got some of this brown paper, and they went to clean off the table for the next wounded guy. And when they went to wipe the table off, a whole bunch of my blood flew up against the bulkhead. And when you're laying there and you're in that kind of pain and you look up at that, and I thought, man, that was part of me. And that burns in your brain pretty heavy, along with the other things. So Fred and I were there, and they said, "Stand by for torpedo run on the starboard side." And I thought, man, we get hit with a torpedo, we're in trouble. And I said to Fred, "Make sure if they call abandoned ship, you get me to our life raft." And Fred promised me, and I went and it did call abandoned ship, but when that torpedo hit, it just like a giant got a hold of that thing and just rocked it and then shoved it. That whole ship moved. And then we started the list, and I said, "Fred, get that life jacket on me." And when he did, then the strap is down below your stomach. And when he did that, then I realized how bad I was hitting in my back, because it pulled on that strap, and I had a whole lot of shrapnel near my spine. I still have a lot of that there yet. I have over 60 pieces left in my body today. Anyhow, the next bit is a blank. That is not developed. I went to Ed Cabaney, and what I'm telling you now, he used EMDR, rapid high hand movement treatments. I went with my wife, Pam, and we went over there, and it's 2 or 3 times I passed out, went right to the floor, and they had to get me up. And every time the doc would say, "Well, here's where you were in your story." And every time I said, "Oh, wait, this happened." Every time I was able to remember more details, more of what happened. So thanks to Ed Cabaney, I can really nail my story and the truth of what happened because of him. Because your mind protects itself, tries to bury it, and don't want to recognize it. So I don't know how this part of the film did not develop. When they called abandoned ship, I don't know how in the hell I did it, because my right arm and my right leg was useless. And I must have hopped over the 14 or 18-inch risers on 2 watertight doors, and I ended up outside. And I was leaning against the rail, and then Fred wasn't there. I don't know what happened, but I was holding on to the rail, and I had my left foot down, and I had to use my elbow to hold my innards in, because I guess when I jumped, that gauze came out. It just felt like all my guts were going to come out on the deck. So I had to use my right arm. I could push this way, but couldn't use my hand and my arm in any other way to hold my my guts in. And I was using the rail because I was pretty strong, because I worked out a good bit, and I would pull myself on the rail, try to get to my life raft. And there's like a little bit of a lowered, like a rain spout type of effect. It's flat. That, when you're washing down the ship, the water runs to side dumps like rain spouts. That was full of blood. I was able to pull myself with my left foot and slide on human blood. And I know some of it was mine because of the fantail. And I pulled myself, and then the torpedo gunboat started firing at me. And it sounded like the big ball bearings you see in old pinball machines hitting the bulkhead, and it was chasing me. And this is where it slows down. You have a dream and you're running as fast as you can, but you're like in slow motion. And I was hoping I could outrun it, and I kept pulling and sliding and pulling and sliding. Luckily I came, and there was a support for the bridge that shielded me. He couldn't see me anymore, and I think that saved me too. But then I got to my life raft, and I was holding on the rail and just standing on my left foot yet. And I could sense that there's somebody beside me. You know how you can sense that, but you don't have to see him? And the same token, you could sense incoming that it was coming. And I don't know how you sense that, but I did. And all of a sudden, it's just splattered. I was just all splattered, and I thought, oh my God, I was hurting so bad because I didn't know, am I hit again or what? I just didn't know. And I lost my balance a little bit, and I had a hop on my left foot. And when I come down, I looked down, and my foot was on the flesh of his calf, and I see his ankle and foot, and that was it. He was gone. Completely blew him to bits beside me. And that's some pretty heavy stuff when you're 21. And I know combat, anything like that, but we were defenseless. That's the bad part. I wish I had a BAR and that fantail. I know I never took that jet out, but I'd have died trying. But we didn't have anything. And Johnson, calling the jets back and just letting us sit there. So many men wouldn't have been wounded if the jets would have been on the way. Israelis' radar, they'd have picked up on that, and they'd have just been told to get the hell out of there. They wouldn't have had a fire shot. But anyhow, I looked up, and my life raft was on fire. I thought, oh man, what next? And then I heard a guy in a gear locker. He opened the door and yelled my name, Weaver, Weaver, get in here. And he saw I was on one foot and holding on to one arm, but he come out, and I don't know who it was, but he got under my armpits and pulled me in the gear locker, ripped off his shirt and stuffed it in the big hole in my stomach area, intestine area. And then they took us into the companionway with the other wounded, because that was in the middle of the ship. So I had more protection than anywhere until they took us down to the mess decks. And we were all praying in there. And I always said it sounded like an oriental chant of some type, like like that type of thing. But we were all praying. And, there's certain sounds you don't forget. So when I was down the mess decks, and you probably have seen the picture of me laying on the mess decks and my shipmates behind me, well, that's online all over the place. Even if you get on Facebook and look on my pages and stuff, there's a picture of that. But anyway, yeah, it's the 50th reunion this year, and that's where, I won't say what day I'm traveling, but that's where I'm going to be going. I'm going at June the 8th, and I invite President Trump to come to that reunion. See how many guts he has. I mean, he's got a lot of guts the way he's doing things, but let him show up there and support us Americans. I mean, we were there putting our lives on the line. Let somebody else, show the respect that those that were murdered that day, that they deserve, that they didn't die in vain, and that us survivors get to testify. And all we want to do is tell the truth. I mean, this is deplorable when you take the word of the enemy and completely shun the victims of the attack. And it's ridiculous. And I just am very disappointed that somebody, we appealed to different presidents and stuff like that, and it just went nowhere. And that's how hushed it is. We were the most decorated United States Navy ship for a single action than any other ship in the United States history, Navy history. And all that decoration and stuff like that, and they don't want to hear about us. We are a red flag to everybody in D.C. And we didn't do anything wrong. We didn't do a damn thing wrong. And yet to make us have to fight like crazy just to try to exercise our right to testify, that's all we want. It's not, all the things are passed and good number of the people are dead that implemented this attack. They're already gone. All we want is, our place in history, and they won't even give us that much. You look in any history book or anything, the USS Liberty isn't mentioned, unless it's mentioned in the context that there was an accidental attack. Usually called USS Liberty incident. Well, I'll tell you, from where I was standing on that fantail, it sure in hell didn't feel like an incident to me. And I've had 35 major surgeries over the years, ever since, and every one had to do with being attacked on USS Liberty June the 8th. I just had back surgery about a month ago now, and because when I was blown up in the air, I come down and I hit with my facial area, it blew all my headphones off and my helmet, and I have a permanent spiral curvature of the spine, and that led to a bent leg, and they had to cut that leg in half and then take a wedge out and crank it over with an apparatus, and I had to keep that in for a year, and then he took it out, and then it changed my gait. You walk, that completely tore all the cartilage out of both knees. So I have total knee replacements, and I have total shoulder replacements. Because I happened to use my left arm so bad, I completely wore that out, and then my right one, I couldn't use it that well because I can only move these two fingers. All the nerves were blown apart here, except for these two fingers. So I am the worst one wounded that lived to this day on the USS Liberty. And I'm not pleading to you. I'm not pleading to anybody. I just think that Washington should step up and give us our right to testify. And I know I've said that several times, but that's really the bottom line for us. If we just get to Congress, wherever, I don't care where it is, testify what happened that day, to the truth of what happened, not, want any recognition or anything, like just the idea that not to keep burying the USS Liberty. Haven't we paid enough dues? My God. It's pathetic. I think my eyewitness account is the best eyewitness account of the air attack because of where I was located on the ship. I was in the far aft of the ship in the back, so I could see how they were coming in each time. And like I said, the American flag got in the way.